Check the description for the following discount codes. Today we're going to take a look at the Fanatec CSL pedals. These, as I'm sure some of you will know, are their entry-level pedals, and this is something we need to bear in mind as we go through this review. They are entry-level and the price is super important. The 2 pedal set, so ignore this clutch for a minute because that's an optional extra, is only €80 plus delivery. And what you get for that is all metal construction, bar the actual pedal faces themselves. Everything else on the pedals is metal. So if we compare them to Logitech or Thrustmaster offerings, you're getting a much more solid and much more rigid set of pedals for €80. And you know, it's almost silly, that price, to be honest. The clutch pedal, which was an optional extra, was €40, I think. Yeah, €40. So even if you bought all 3, we're only looking at €120 for a complete pedal set, full metal construction, all bar the faces. Now the faces can be upgraded to metal ones. I actually have them here in the background. They're not out yet, so I don't actually have a price for you, but whatever they will be is whatever they will be. And I will stick them on in a minute just to show you what they look like. I've obviously used both the plastic ones that come with it, and I've put them back on so that you can see what you get in the standard form, and I've used them with the upgraded metal ones as well. So I suppose we may as well talk about these first then. Even with socks on, which aren't particularly grippy, the plastic pedal faces, they function just fine. They do, of course, feel cheap and feel plasticky, because they are. But as far as functionality goes, they function just fine. My feet weren't slipping off. There's no hard, you know, there's like a beveled edge on all of them. They work just fine for the price you're paying. No, they don't look premium. No, they're not premium. Yes, they do feel cheap and plasticky, but they work. So no real issues with those. Whether they would wear out over time if you were a shoe wearer when you race, obviously we won't know at this point because I haven't used them long enough, and I won't use them with the plastic ones because I have the metal ones. It wouldn't make any, and they just look so much nicer. So yeah, we won't know about that, but I imagine if the plastic is hard enough, probably won't, you know, wear out that badly, if at all, because the soles of whatever shoes you choose to race in are not going to be like, they're not going to be metal, they're not going to be cheese graters grating away at the pedals, so they'll probably be all right. But that's, you know, that's the only plastic part on it. It's the only bit that perhaps may wear away if you wear particularly rough footwear. How it comes when it arrives is a 2 pedal set. This metal plate and the pedals are packed separately. I'll just grab the box, in fact. They are, should have left that a bit closer, shouldn't I, Carl? They so they come like this, and the pedals, there's not much in the box other than a RJ12 cable and a Torx tool for doing up the little bolts that hold it all together, which we'll talk about in a second. But yeah, other than that, it's just a bit of foam in the box. But that's what the box looks like, should you be interested. And then this is, as we're looking at boxes, this is the box that the clutch pedal came in. Oh, and there was also some Fanatec stickers, and then the actual instructions themselves as well. All the usual sort of stuff you'd expect, you know, in your retail packaging. So yeah, they come, it comes not assembled. So what you've got is you've got this plate here, and then you've got your 2 pedals, all packed separately in the box. And the way these pedals are fixed to this plate is really simple. There's just 4 of these Torx bolts for each pedal that you can see, hopefully, there. And as you can see, there's more holes either side of them. So should you want to position the pedals in different places, maybe you only want to run a 2 pedal setup, a lot of people do, you can space them out and put them exactly where you want. And that's where this little tool comes in, literally just for undoing those. Nice and easy. You know, I thought about not putting them together and showing you on camera, but what's the point? We all know how to put 4 screws in 4 holes now, don't we? And again, here's the Underside, you can see where those 4 screws would come through, or Torx bolts would come through for each pedal. Whilst we're on the underside, again, you can see everything's metal here. We've got rubber feet, which would aid it from slipping on carpet, which actually does a reasonable job. On my carpet in this room, they didn't really slip around that much. Obviously, you want to bolt them down if you can, but the feet actually do a reasonable task. There's also some little bits of rubber that you slip on here and here. Again, it is at the same level as the other rubber grip, so I guess it's to help with not slipping on, you know, carpet and solid floor, hard floors as well. We've then got our wiring. All the wiring for each of these other 2 pedals plugs into the accelerator there, and on the other side of the accelerator is your RJ12 port that either goes to a Fanatec wheelbase. There is no USB adapter or lead with this, or it says load cell on the side there as well. So presumably when the load cell upgrade comes out for the brake pedal, which isn't out yet, and I will have one when it does, I'm guessing that's going to plug into there because it is labelled, and then you would take your RJ12 that goes into the wheelbase and plug that into the load cell kit. That's kind of how it looks like it would probably work. So yeah, this isn't load cell at the moment. All 3 pedals are Hall effect sensors, no potentiometers. Again, comparing them to things like the Logitech pedals, they're all potentiometers. And whilst there's nothing particularly wrong with potentiometers, and if you use decent ones, they'll last a long time, Hall effect sensors literally have no moving parts, so in theory should last a lot longer. And they're actually located, I don't know whether you'll be able to see this on camera, but they are located down the back there. You can see the black plastic, and then to the right or the left, I can't quite make it out from here, there is like a magnet in a case, and that's how it works. You can also see the springs at the bottom there. They're the coil springs that actually provide the resistance for the pedals. So rather than having, like on the Logitech for example, springs behind the pedals that get compressed as you squish them down, they're actually at the very bottom where the pedals pivot, and then part of the spring protrudes up and presses against the back of the pedal itself there, and that's where the pressure is applied. So slightly different mechanism to what we've seen on others. Works just fine, very springy. And of course on the brake pedal as well, we've got this piece of polyurethane foam, they describe it as, and that adds the feeling of progression as you apply force to the brake. So there is a spring at the bottom there, and then that gradually gets more and more squished as you're pressing the pedal, and provides slightly greater resistance progressively the further the pedal gets down, in a similar fashion to the piece of rubber in the bottom of the Logitech pedals. Comparing those two, this is nowhere near as stiff as that piece of rubber in the Logitech pedals. You can quite easily with your hand squeeze these and bottom it out like that, whereas with the Logitech one requires a lot more force, to the point where some people even remove them because they struggle to hit 100% braking force, which you don't need to do, by the way. I've got a video on this. You can literally calibrate the pedal in game or in the Windows control panel so that you don't have to press the pedal maximum force to, you know, maximum travel to reach 100% braking force. But that's another video. Should you be a G920 or G29 owner and struggle with that, search my channel for it. But yeah, so this is much easier to press all the way down, all the way through its travel than what the Logitech one is. So that's really the only gripe with these pedals. And again, it isn't a gripe because they're 80 quid, which is just no money. It's what you expect at this price point, so it's fine. But when the load cell upgrade comes out, assuming it isn't silly money, you know, that's really gonna turn what is a very entry-level set of pedals into actually a pretty decent set of pedals, especially if you add the metal faces on, you know, just to give it that more premium feel and premium look. They're going to be pretty decent, you know. The Hall effect sensors work just fine. Everything works just fine as it is. Obviously the clutch is linear as well, unlike the V3s that have that sort of simulated clutch spring feel that you overcome as you would be around the biting point in a real car, just as those clutch springs sort of, you overcome them, you feel it go, it builds up to be heavy and then it gets lighter as you overcome the springs. This obviously is just a linear spring, so you can't sort of set a biting point in your game by the feel of the pedal. It just, it just is where it is, sort of thing. So again, for the price, it's all perfectly acceptable. We wouldn't expect anything else. So what else? I'll put a clip up now, in fact, of me using the pedals. Because they're not particularly heavy to operate, there is no side-to-side flex or twisting or anything like that that you might see on, heavier pedals with load cells that are quite hard to depress. Because these are reasonably light underfoot, as you can see in the video, there's no twisting or moving around or any sort of play, there. Just, there might be if you were to apply more force, but then it is all steel construction. It does look fairly well made. Even with the load cell upgrade, I wouldn't expect to see any sort of movement, but you never know, and we'll see when that load cell upgrade arrives. So as far as mounting them goes, obviously ideally you want to bolt them down to your rig. There is a mounting point here and here, and these are captive, and they are M6, so you would get M6 bolts and you would screw them from underneath your rig into there. At the back we have this hole here, which is an M8 hole, so it's actually bigger than what the bolts would be at the front. Ignore this hole here, that's what I drilled just because I happen to have some holes on my GT Amiga Prime, and that's where they lined up. So rather than drilling the Prime, I just used the holes in the Prime as a guide and just drilled straight through these and put some M6 bolts through. But they are actually M8 holes at the back here, should you choose to use those. So you'll need M6 bolts for the front, M8 nut and bolts for the back, because these are obviously just a hole going through, they're not captive. So you'll need to put a bolt through there and then a nut on the back as well, and ideally a washer either side if you're going to do things properly. So that's how they're fixed down. There's also two of these little spacery things, and they go over the captive nut there to bring the level of where you're pinching down to be in line with the feet and everything else, because otherwise you could keep doing that up and doing that up and you'd bend this piece in here as you were tightening it up. So they've thought about that, which is nice. There's obviously two of those. I think that's probably everything we need to talk about when it comes to what you get in its basic form. The quality is good construction, apart from the cheapy plastic covers. Again, 80 notes or 120 with the clutch. What do we expect? Hall effect sensors are good. Progressive brake pedal does feel progressive, albeit quite light compared to load cells or even the G920. You've seen how you fix it down. You've seen how you adjust your pedal positions by undoing these bolts, moving them left to right. There is no angle adjustment for the pedals, but you can adjust the faces up and down. If you look at the back here, there's a set of holes there, so you can actually adjust the height of the pedal faces. That was something I didn't show you earlier, but that's it. So you've got some left to right, you've got some up and down. There is no angle, there is no sort of preload adjustment as such or anything like that. But again, they're entry-level pedals, 120 notes for what you see there. We don't expect anything more, do we? They're decent for what they are. So what I'm going to do now is swap the pedal faces over just so you can see what they look like with the metal faces on, should you want to upgrade to those. There we go, they're installed using the provided tools. Let's turn the aircon off, which is this little double-ended socket bar type thing, I suppose. It's like sockets on each end on a bar, I suppose is what you might call it. It's not a spanner, is it? And of course then the Torx bit as well. Now, you might think now we've got metal face plates, that the plastic is now completely gone from these, but it hasn't, because what's behind those pedal faces are plastic spacers, and I guess the reason for that is because they wanted to keep the front of the face the same distance as the original ones from the back section. Because otherwise, if you just fitted these thin sort of aluminium face plates straight to the pedal arms themselves, you'd lose a certain amount of thickness. So we've got some plastic spacers behind there, and they've also, these pedal faces came with their own bolts, washers and nylock nuts. I guess the reason again they're with nylock nuts is because now we've got 3 pieces joining together here, the pedal arms, the pedal faces and the spacers. If you were to just use like what came with the original pedals, and you know, first of all, there's no captive thread in the face plates like there is on the back of those, so you couldn't do it. But I think they thought perhaps there'd be a chance they might work their way loose. So we've got bolts, washers and nylock nuts. But they really look, you know, much nicer. And again, they now feel, you know, a bit more premium. You don't get that same sort of plasticky cheapness, you know, when you touch them with your hands or with your feet. And if you were concerned about, you know, shoes wearing out these plastic pedal faces, you know, you haven't got to worry about that now. In fact, the plastic spacers behind these are also what make up the white in the F for the Fanatec logo on there. But yeah, they only took a couple of minutes to fit. As I say, this is the box. It says it's a tuning kit, but in reality, you know, it's just some face plates. There's no, doesn't come with any springs or any additional polyurethane, you know, inserts for the brake pad or anything like that. It's literally just the 3 pedal faces. But for me, depending how much money they are, because I don't have a price yet, I would quite happily have this pedal set with those faces, you know, as like a mid-range set of pedals. And you know, when the load cell comes out, again, if it's not too much money, you may end up with a really solid, half decent looking, I mean, not as nice looking as the V3s or some of the other higher end pedals, you know, and they don't perform like them, but they work just fine. It's a little bit like when I did the CSL DD review and I was using the Thrustmaster shifter with the G920 pedals on the GT Omega Titan cockpit. All entry to mid-level stuff. Even the CSL DD is an entry-level direct drive wheelbase. The price obviously doesn't put it entry level in the whole world of sim racing accessories, but for direct drive it's entry level price. And I was reminded how much fun you can still have with mid-range, entry-level mid-range stuff, you know, as long as it works well and isn't, you know, plasticky and flexing around or terrible force feedback or bits breaking off, unreliable sensor or whatever. You know, as long as it's good enough, like what we have here, most people will be just fine. As sim racers, it's very easy to get carried away upgrading to the next best set of pedals because they've come out and because they've got load cells on every pedal, or because they've got hydraulic master cylinders and slave cylinders, or, you know, they look a bit shinier perhaps than the ones we've currently got. But we don't always need to upgrade and we don't always need to spend big bucks. So I think anybody who bought these either as the 2 pedal or 3 pedal set, and even using the plastic covers, because you've got to bear in mind 80 quid or 120 quid, 2 or 3 pedals, I don't think you're going to be unhappy with them. I think you're going to be quite pleased. The operation of each pedal is very smooth and there's no squeaking, no rattles. You know, everything just worked as you would expect it to. So yeah, that's my review of the Fanatec CSL Pedals 2 and 3 setup and the face plates that are due to come out as well. They get a solid recommendation from me, just like the CSL direct drive wheelbase did. There are Fanatec links in the description. Should you want to buy a set, by all means go ahead. Every affiliate click always helps the channel as well, so that's appreciated. But yeah, I think for the money, decent little set of pedals. Lovely. As always, thank you very much for watching and take it easy.